I think we have to disabuse ourselves of that notion that this is a battle between Muslim and Jew, or that, constantly you heard after the October event was that Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. Even to this day, we hear it's Hamas,
Yes.
Hamas, Hamas. What is Hamas? Because I don't think it's Islamic terror that's taking place in the first place.
The majority of all terrorists in the world are Muslim.
Without a permit by Israel, and they don't usually give those permits, especially now.
The reality is checkpoints exist everywhere because of Palestinian terror.
So it wasn't done for security to build that wall, done simply to expand the borders of Israel.
All the stuff this woman leaves out is so insane to me. All right, welcome to another episode of Love People Enough. I'm Micah.
And I'm Aaron.
And welcome to our show. We're going to watch and discuss an interview between Tucker Carlson and Mother Agapia Stephanopoulos. So before we go into this interview, just a quick history of her. Let me just pull this up real quick. All right, so she became famous, a couple different incidents, but just one we'll go over real quick. This is an overview of the 2002 Church of the Nativity siege. The siege occurred from April 2nd to May 10th, 2002, during Israel's Operation Defensive Shield, a large-scale military response to a wave of Palestinian suicide bombings during the Second Intifada, including, for example, the March 27th Park Hotel bombing in Netanyahu that killed 30 civilians. So during the Second Intifada, the Palestinians were killing as many innocent civilians as they could. This was a bloodthirsty, terrible time to be a Jew. You were being killed everywhere humanly possible by the Palestinians during the Second Intifada. So I guess what happened here is the IDF entered Bethlehem to apprehend wanted terrorists. As they advanced, dozens of these Palestinian terrorists from terrorist groups like Fatah's Tanzim, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and Palestinian forces fled into the Church of the Nativity complex. Why is that important? This is one of Christianity's holiest sites, traditionally regarded as the birthplace of Jesus. Wow. So they were joined by civilians, policemen, and clergy already present. So the estimates varied depending on who you were asking. The IDF basically said there was about 240 people inside, with 200 plus being armed terrorists. The Palestinians claimed that there were only a handful, and most of them were civilians and,
they were
peaceful.
Unarmed.
Yeah, peaceful, unarmed people. Okay, sure. This was a 39-day standoff, right? These are violent terrorists inside this place. And so while this is going on, Mother Agapia is sending emails to the world, telling the world essentially that the IDF is evil, they're killing babies and innocents, and that the Palestinians are just freedom fighters, right? There's nothing wrong with them. They're not the bad guys here. So as some of the events that went on during this stuff, absolutely unbelievable, such as
using the Bible.
Yeah. So they recorded. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, using Bible pages for toilet paper, defecating in the nativity areas.
That's pooping in the area that Jesus was born, to be clear, and then using the Bible to wipe their butts.
Yeah,
and this is the least of what these terrorists were responsible for. And during this time, Mother Agapia is saying the IDF is evil, right? Everything they're doing is wrong, and the Palestinians are the good guys. And later, basically, she had to come out and take responsibility and claim that her reports were unfounded. She had no proof whatsoever of IDF killing babies or innocents. It was all a lie. So this is one of the big events that defined Mother Agapia, someone who lied for terrorists. And so that's who she is, in my opinion, before we even start this interview between Tucker Carlson. So I would just say for our viewers, keep that in mind while you listen to this person, okay? She was supporting murderers who defecate on holy sites, destroy holy artifacts, during a time where they were killing as many innocent men, women, and children as possible. And this is who she chose to represent versus the people who are trying to stop this. And that's the Israeli Defense Forces, a.k.a. the Jews, the good guys. All right. Now let's go ahead and get this interview started. This is going to be another doozy here.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, sure.
So you first moved to the Holy Land in 1996
Correct. Yep.
as a nun.
Right.
How are Christians doing in the Holy Land?
Well, it's become a very difficult time for them there.
The only place
Basically,
where
the Christians are in the
Christians
same
are safe.
situation as the Muslims, being a Palestinian. So the problem is, so there's two different things. If you live in Israel, you're a citizen. And so they can live there and work, but there's sort of some petty grievances that people might have. But if you're a Christian in Palestine, which is where most of the activities of the life of Christ are, Bethlehem, Jerusalem, the Mount of Olives, Jericho, Jacob's Well, that's all within Palestine. And so that's the predominance of the Christian population there. And they're treated with the effects of the occupation, which means you have checkpoints around you. A Christian who lives in Bethlehem cannot go to Jerusalem, to the Holy Sepulchre, without a permit by Israel. And they don't usually give those permits, especially now.
A Christian can't.
No, without permission from Israel.
That's interesting because I mean those Christians that
Right.
you're describing, I mean, they're the descendants of the Christians
Absolutely,
who
yeah.
were converted
They've been
by
there
Jesus.
from the beginning. Yeah. I mean, right. Christ came as a Jew, right?
Yes.
Went to the temple, but the people that converted and have lived there for centuries are, in fact, I think there's been studies done that on Palestinians living there now, and they are the Canaanite descendants.
Yes.
They're people that have been there for centuries. Not all, or the greater part, not just Palestine included, Syria and Lebanon at a different time under different empires and things.
So it's interesting. So right off the bat, she's being dishonest. She's talking about basically, how evil the IDF are with all these checkpoints. That's where she's headed with this. The reality is checkpoints exist everywhere because of Palestinian terror. The only reason why Christians and Jews, and ironically Palestinians, can't move freely everywhere in the country, it's because of the Palestinians, of raping and killing you every chance they get, wherever they can. Mm-hmm. Places like this, where she blames the Israeli Defense Forces, for this, for treating the Christians with the effects of the occupation. The IDF doesn't want to do this stuff. Nobody wants to do this stuff. Mm-hmm. There was a time where many of these checkpoints didn't exist. It didn't exist at all. They all came because of Palestinian suicide terror attacks. Mm-hmm. So right off the bat, it feels very dishonest in the way she's framing it. She's leaving out the reason why these checkpoints exist and why it's difficult to access certain areas.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, they're the first Christians, the Christians at the time of Christ. And it's very difficult to practice their faith. It's sort of like you're in a gilded cage. And that's how I look at Bethlehem. Within Bethlehem, you can live there, but you can't go and visit your friend who lives near Jacob's Well in Nablus without taking it. In fact, the priest in Bethlehem just told me the other day, his wife is from near Jenin, which normally would take you about an hour and a half to get between the two. Her father has prostate cancer. In order to get treatment, there was only hospitals. Nothing in the Northwest Bank could deal with it, either in Jerusalem or in Hebron, which is south of Bethlehem. And last year, or a couple of years ago, he was able to go to Jerusalem with a permit to get the treatment. But this year, the Israelis wouldn't let him. So it took him over 5 hours to get down to Hebron, and a man who's old and sick to doing things. So whether it's for those kind of activities or practicing your faith or visiting your relatives, which is part of Christian life too, right? You want to celebrate the holidays with your family and friends. It becomes very difficult to do.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, like, IDF sets up those checkpoints for a reason, and anyone could claim that they're a Christian. So it's not like there's really anything that, you can really do. It's an occupied territory. Yeah, it's going to be hard to traverse. It should be hard to traverse. That's the whole intention.
Yeah, and I don't think people want it that way. Why would anybody want to live a life like that? It's just not because the Jews are evil. It's because they don't want to be killed anymore. They don't want their family and friends to be slaughtered on their way home from just doing a regular day's job. They don't want their sons and daughters who, actually, many of them love and care about the Palestinians, and get murdered for going out of their way to look out for them. Mother Agapia hides all the reasons for what she's already talking about. And she's already painting the IDF, Israeli, the Jews, as being the reasons why everything's difficult, instead of telling the truth in that if they weren't under threat, if the people they loved and cared for weren't going to be killed and have not been killed for 100 years now, 75 years now by these people, if this stuff didn't exist, it would be freedom for everybody there. And if she were to tell the truth of that and go back to Palestine, she would be killed. She will be killed for saying that it's not the Jews' fault. Something to keep in mind here.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe that's why she's doing it.
Well,
Fear?
I'm pretty sure, I don't think that's it. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure she's a dual citizen. I don't think she'd have any issue coming to America or out of that area. I think that's most likely just a choice because she's been radicalized just like the rest of them.
Yeah,
no matter what evil comes from the Palestinian side, as far as she's concerned, the IDF are responsible for all of it, the evil Jews. This is Tucker's wet dream of an interview right here. He was so excited throughout this entire thing.
The reason I'm asking these questions, well, first, I think it's worth worrying about Christians who are the minority population. Well, it's worth worrying about Christians in general. But the United States is a majority Christian country that pays for a huge percentage of the Israeli economy, both through trade and direct grants and military assistance and all the rest. Israel couldn't exist without the United States. So, and it has the support of so many Christians in the United States. And I don't know if they're fully aware. I want to think they would care if they knew how the Christians are doing. And I keep reading that the Christian population in the region has declined dramatically since Israel became a state in 1948. Right. And I'm not quite sure why.
Did you hear what he just said? Did you hear the trick he just used? Did you hear the trick he just used?
What?
He said the Christian population in the region is, I don't know if vanishing or...
declining since 1948.
In the region. You see the slimy word he just used? We're talking about all the Middle East now.
No.
Okay? That's the trick he just used. Right? The reality is they have been genocided and ethnically cleansed from nearly every Muslim country in the Middle East. There's only one place in the Middle East where Christians thrive. That is Israel. And so the two of them are literally just lying to each other back and forth for the audience to watch. And they don't know these things when they watch this. They think, Christians are vanishing in the area and they can't go anywhere because of the evil Jews? Well, Christians are vanishing because they're getting killed and ethnically cleansed in pretty much every Muslim majority country that exists. And then the Palestinians, a.k.a. more Muslims, are then killing as many Jews as they can, which forces security checkpoints everywhere. The only place where Christians thrive, I'll say it one more time, is in Israel, where the population continues to thrive, continues to grow, continues to be able to practice their religion without being jailed or killed. Just so we understand what's going on here. And this might be an episode where we pause it a little bit more than normal because there's so many lies in here. This isn't like the last one where it's Ted Cruz, who's probably speaking, 90 to 95% truthish, versus Tucker lying up every chance he gets. This is one where two people are going to lie every time they speak. And so this type of commentary will be very important. Because people, hopefully, we can let them see, all is not as it seems.
All right.
Well, again, I think it has to do because the whole issue is that Israel has continued to grow and think that they can dominate the Christian areas, the areas of Palestine. So they make it very difficult for anyone else to be able to live there. As simple as that.
But you would think Christians would get a special pass or dispensation because the United States is the great patron and it's a Christian country.
No, because, the problem you have is one with the Christian Zionists, the ones who don't recognize the Christians in the Holy Land as being fully Christian, apparently. Because why would I have a very hard time understanding why someone who calls himself a Christian and then gives money to support the building of settlements. Do we understand what that means? The settlements are in the areas of Palestine. They're taking over the land that belongs to the people of Palestine.
What she's not mentioning is that it's my understanding that these settlements are Jewish people who have purchased that land legally. Not only have they purchased that land legally, but they farm the land. They create such a healthy, functioning environment everywhere these settlers go. And they're like the polar opposite of the people. She's talking about, this is the Christian right now who represents terrorism. That's who she is right now. She's a Christian who represents people who grape and murder children, who destroy holy sites, who defame holy objects. And she's against the people who don't do any of these things.
Yeah.
And this has been going on, like I said, I've been there since 1996, and I've seen the continued growth of the settlement. I lived in Bethany, biblical Bethany. Beyond and over the mountain, Mount of Olives, was the convent I was in Jerusalem. And to the east of me was the settlement of Mali Adumim in 1998.
Sorry, super quick. I read this not too long ago, it was a couple weeks back, maybe a month or two back, about the settlements, about how settler violence is essentially documented. I thought this was fascinating, right? Because there's a lot of focus on quote-unquote settler violence, right? So take the West Bank, for example. So if, let's say, two Palestinians attempt to grape and murder their neighbors, a settler family, okay? Mm-hmm. The settler family fights back and kills the two Palestinians who tried to grape and murder their family. Mm-hmm. That gets logged as settler violence. To be clear, this is how little lies like this spread, and they make their way up to, New York Times and CNN and all the other news organizations, Reuters, AP, all those ones that lie to us. It's stuff like this that makes their way up to the top, and it's little deceits like this. That's how they lie.
Yeah. It's awful.
Yep, settler violence. Yeah, so settlers defend themselves, and now it gets logged as settler violence, and the whole world talks about how evil the Jews are yet again.
It was a relatively small settlement then. And then you go down the road to Jericho. It was one lane. It's now a larger highway. And that settlement of Mali Adumim is like a huge city and has closed off the people of Bethany. We are closed off in Bethany from going to our convent in Jerusalem because of the wall that was built on Palestinian land, on Christian land. There's a Christian home for boys that the Israelis just took over and cut up to make part of the wall that's separated. So it wasn't done for security to build that wall, done simply to expand the borders of Israel.
Wait, so they went right through Christian land. Did
Yeah.
Christians in the West say anything about this?
Very few. I mean, there was, and also on that stretch at the lower end of the Mount of Olives, there was a nursing home run by a Catholic church, and the nun that was in charge, she spoke to the French press, and soon after she was sent to Lebanon or to another post. Wasn't allowed to be there. Me, at the same time, the wall was built right beyond Lazarus's tomb. Our school is walking distance from Lazarus's tomb, from where Martha and Mary lived, and they built the wall right above where the tomb is. So that separated some of our teachers from being able to come to school. It separated our families on either side of the wall. So in April of 2005, I went to Washington and spoke to some congresspeople, not to demean Jews or not to even demean the state of Israel, to say, look, we are being affected by this wall. It's affecting our religious life. I can't go to visit my convent easily anymore because of this wall. It's disrupting our school life. And we'd like to see, it's not for security. It's not separating Israel from Palestine. It's separating Palestine from Palestine in the two. I get back home.
I'm sorry, what kind of reception did you, so you went to Congress?
Yeah. And there were a handful. Actually, I remember a very sweet occurrence. He's died since, but Senator Paul Wellstone of Minnesota, I was scheduled to meet him and he wasn't there, but then he came and he literally ran down the hall to catch me. So there are a few people that were sympathetic, but overall, no. And I even felt the sense when I was talking to people that I went to a meeting where there were a few aides there of different congresspeople, right? Not just in one office, and just felt as if there was someone there watching what he was saying or doing going on. So anyway, so I get back.
Did you meet with any Christian church leaders here in the U.S.?
Unfortunately, I mean, the Catholic Church has done a lot and said a lot, But I sad to say, I feel the Orthodox Church in America has been very reluctant to speak out on this issue.
Why?
Or to get involved. Maybe sometimes I think it's just simply awareness. Even when people go on pilgrimages to the Holy Land, they probably have Israeli tour guides, and they don't, it's an amazing experience to go to the Holy Land. It's overwhelming to be, a pious person to go there, and you're thinking about going to see where Jesus was, and here I'm on the Sea of Galilee, and you don't really perceive what that wall means, or who are those people living over there, or how come there's only cars with yellow plates here. And then we were in Jericho, and I saw these green and white plates. What does that mean going on? They don't understand it, so they don't get the concept.
What does the yellow
for 2 weeks.
License plate mean?
Yellow plate is for people who live in the state of Israel, and they can go on certain roads, all roads, and for Palestinians who have a Jerusalem ID are allowed to have a car with a yellow plate. And then Palestinians have green and white plates, and they cannot use. So over that time that I've been here, as the settlements have grown, you build the infrastructure for it. The electricity, the roads, separate roads that are used only by people that have yellow plates. As a foreigner and part of a foreign church, we were entitled to have either those, or they also have white diplomatic plates, that kind of diplomatic and religious plates that are there. So there's very much an apartheid system. Very much so. It's which gave me the freedom to help my Christian friends in Bethlehem and other places. Like one time there was a woman who, her daughter, they were from Bethlehem, married a Christian who lived in Jerusalem. So he had rights to be in the city of Jerusalem, have blue ID. But the mother, when the daughter gave birth to their first child, she didn't have any way to go to see her daughter because it would be illegal for her to go into Jerusalem to get there. So I had the school van, and I went to Bethlehem, go get her. And a lot of times we'd have a little more leeway. If I go through a checkpoint, they'll see it's a nun, and I go pass through a lot easier than someone else would. So I was able to get her through to be able to go see her daughter at the birth of her grand.
I'll just be totally blunt with you.
Mm-hmm.
Most Americans are aware that there's a system, something like what you just described.
Right.
But the pretext for it, the justification for it, is that there's a lot of Islamic terrorism. There are a couple intifadas. There are a lot of suicide bombings. And it's Islamic terror. And most Americans have been taught for 25 years that Islamic terror is a threat. And, there's some truth in that, of course. But so we assume that Christians would be getting an exemption from all this. Why would Christians who are not responsible for Christian terror, there's no such thing, why would they be penalized for this? Why wouldn't they, again, when the patron saint state is majority Christian, why wouldn't the Christians there be getting some kind of special pass? I just don't understand that. Why punish the Christians for Islamic terror?
Because I don't think it's Islamic terror that's taking place in the first place. Wow. I think we have to disabuse ourselves of that notion that this is a battle between Muslim and Jew, or that, constantly you heard after the October event was that Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. Even to this day, we hear it's Hamas,
Yes.
Hamas, Hamas. What is Hamas? Hamas are people who have had their homes taken from them, who, if they live in Gaza, have not been basically been in an open air prison for certainly the last 20 years going on. Even when the Israelis withdrew from Gaza, they didn't leave open borders.
Okay, so let's talk about the open air prison.
Let's talk about the fact that she glossed over 1,200 people getting killed.
Oh, yeah. So we have to disabuse ourselves of the Islam versus Jewish concept. And terrorism isn't really a thing. Can you imagine saying such a thing? The majority of all terrorists in the world are Muslim. There are an infinite number of terror attacks in every single country in the whole world by Muslims. Not only that, if that wasn't bad enough, the amount of terror attacks that have been prevented throughout the entire world, largely thanks to Israel and their intelligence, sharing it with the Western countries across the world. The amount of lives that the Jews have saved, incredible. But the fact that you can just say, Islamic terror is not really a thing, that's really what she's saying. What was the other piece, real quick? What was that question I just asked a second ago? The first question. Do you remember?
Hamas aren't terrorists.
Yeah. So, yeah, Hamas aren't terrorists, right? So Hamas, she's right about one part in that this focus on Hamas is a lie. It is deceit. That is one of the greatest problems. We're not really talking about the truth. When October 7th happened, there were thousands of not just terrorists who crossed the border, but thousands of regular Palestinians. Things that news organizations would call innocent Palestinians, as they like to use that phrase. The reason they use that phrase is because we focus on this concept of Hamas. Hamas is just one of the many recent Islamic terror organizations that exist. Mm-hmm. In the end, it comes back to Palestinianism, and Palestinianism is essentially one thing. It says that the Jews will not get a land of a sovereign state of their own anywhere, period. This is what really Palestinianism stands for. The Jews will never have a state of their own. That's the issue. The issue is people talk about a two-state solution. The two-state solution isn't possible because one side, that's the Jews, are willing to allow both people to have a state. This is how it's been throughout all of history. But the other side, the Palestinians, aka the Muslims, they will not allow the Jews to exist in any way whatsoever, period, unless it's as ironically, a dhimmi status, an apartheid status, which is the thing she's actually talking about, which is what happens in all the Muslim countries. If you're not a Muslim, you're a second-class citizen. You have less rights. You have to pay the jizya tax. There's certain tax, that's the monthly tax that hasn't been paid because you're essentially a barbarian to them. And not only do you have to pay that tax, you have to pay it in a humbling, humiliating way. This is all from the Quran. So this is why, like, to be a second-class citizen in a Muslim country is pretty bad. It's really bad, you know?
There was no freedom for people in Gaza to develop their economy. If I know people who wanted to try to go to school in America and couldn't get out of Gaza, had a Fulbright scholarship and weren't able to leave.
I mean, couldn't get out.
That's why.
Israel didn't give her permission. So what kind of freedom is that? If you live in Gaza?
They couldn't even fly out?
No. And their airport had been bombed in 2000 and early on. 2000, there was an airport built soon after the Oslo Accords. But Israel has intervened many times in Gaza and little by little destroyed. When I first went there in 2002, after the second intifada started, I remember saying to my mother back home, this is genocide, even that genocide by Chinese water torture. But now we're seeing genocide on steroids.
You're American, I should say.
Yes, I'm born in America. Yeah.
So real quick, the two things I wanted to discuss real quick was the concept of an open-air prison before 2005, and that, as she put it, they weren't even allowed to control their own borders after Israel pulled out. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on those two?
I'm not too familiar with what occurred for the split between the West Bank and Gaza.
That's a whole nother ball game.
That's why.
Large. For simplicity's sake here, Gaza, essentially, you got the West Bank right up top. You got Gaza in the southwest. Gaza, essentially, she refers to as an open-air prison. Once upon a time, I referred to it that way myself. But that's because I was extremely ignorant of what's going on. Now, when I think of an open-air prison, I picture prison with prison guards everywhere. You don't have shops, you don't have movie theaters, right? You don't have ice cream, right? You don't have freedom, right? You don't have relationships, right? You're not having children, right? When I think of an open air prison, it's the opposite of what she's talking about, because these people didn't live in an open air prison. They had movie theaters, they have restaurants, right? They can get married, they can fall in love, they can get real educations, right? They have luxury cars and live in luxury hotels and luxury lives, as so many of these Palestinians did before 2005. But so the concept of an open-air prison is just nonsense. These were people who had the ability to leave healthy, successful, fulfilling lives in Gaza. The difference was IDF controlled it internally, and what that meant was that it kept so many of the, not just the Jews, but it kept so many of these Palestinians safe as well. In 2005, we pulled out and we allowed them to function on their own. This was essentially the two-state solution. We've already tried it. It happened in 2005. The Palestinians were given the opportunity to elect people, and who did they elect? A terror organization. And when you're a terrorist society, as the Palestinians are, and I realize that will offend many people, that's only because you're not willing to look at the truth of what's going on. When you have a terrorist society, you elect terrorists because you don't know any better. Palestine, for example, has schools and streets, hospitals named after terrorists themselves. When you grow up, when you grow up and you have nothing but love and respect and care for people who grape and murder other people, how could you do anything other than vote a terrorist in? You've been taught nothing else. So from 2005 and on, the Palestinians were given the opportunity to finally rule themselves, to prosper, show the world what you people are truly capable of. Israel left multiple functioning businesses that were bringing a whole bunch of income. They left these greenhouses filled with good, healthy stuff for the population. They were all destroyed. They were all bulldozed and destroyed immediately because they came from the Jews. That's how these people started off their freedom, by destroying the kind, healthy things that were left by the Jews to help them prosper. First thing they did was destroy it all. Then, over this next 20 years, right, how many bomb shelters did these people build? In Israel, there's bomb shelters everywhere. Most homes have their own little bomb shelters as well. That's a society that loves and takes care of their people. How many did the Palestinians build?
Probably none.
0. Not a single bomb shelter for their people. Additionally, obviously, Hamas took over all schooling for all children. Every child, and we'll play it at some point. I don't know if you've ever seen the Palestinian kindergarten graduation where they show Palestinian children. This is kindergarten.
جبل ما يهزك ريح، هيك أقول. هذا شعب لم ينحني ولم يركع، ولن ينحني ولن يركع. بدمائهم وأرواحهم يدافعون ليس عن أموالهم لكنهم يدافعون في أرض الرباط عن أولى القبلتين وثالث الحرمين الشريفين نصر النبي محمد صلوات الله عليه وسلم ومهد ورفعة سيدنا المسيح عليه السلام.
فلسطينيين 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 وبدنا نحميها للقاع. فلسطينيين 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 وبدنا نحميها للقاع. فلسطينيين 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 وبدنا نحميها للقاع.
They show them moving like a military unit, clearing buildings and houses, planting bombs under cars, pretending to stab innocent people. This is what they're taught from kindergarten.
Yeah.
So for 20 years, the whole world has allowed a terrorist organization in an already terrorist society to become even more terroristic and militant by training kindergartners, giving them the same level, some version of same level of combat training that you and I had. Well, probably not quite as good, but I remember clearing buildings with my
Right.
people, right? We've cleared. I know what that's like, right? The skill that brings to you, right? Imagine when kindergartners are taught that.
Yeah.
And so for 20 years, they have the opportunity to show the world who they could be if given freedom. And instead, they've created, thousands of miles or hundreds of miles of terror tunnels. Only the terrorists are allowed in them. Left all the innocents to be killed up there. They don't allow innocent people to leave whenever they're given the opportunity. They put snipers in the top of hospitals, and they kill Palestinians who try to get away. They do everything they can to kill as many Palestinians on their part as possible to paint the Jews as evil. Right? They have a Hamas wing in every... This is a report that came out recently. We're going to have to delve into this sometime soon. But they have a Hamas wing in every single hospital in Palestine, for example. In every single school and hospital, you might have school books, medical supplies in one room, and then you have RPGs, mortars, grenades, etc. in the next room. You have Palestinians that function as doctors in the day and terrorists at night. Journalists in the day and terrorists at night. School teachers in the day and terrorists at night. Moms and dads in the day and terrorists at night. This is like, people don't get it, but this is like, it's like a movie where you go into a society and one out of every three people is going to try to grape and kill you if given the opportunity. And they look like normal people, and they act like normal people until they kill you, until they come for you and everyone you love and hold dear. Our imagination in America, in the world, we don't even know how to imagine that properly. We don't even make movies and shows like this anymore, which is a shame, because we need this kind of stuff. I think there was a show, I don't know if you ever saw it, it was called The Following.
I don't think I ever saw that one.
I could be wrong. I just remember it vaguely from back in the day, but it was some cult leader or something like that who influenced all these people everywhere in life. And essentially you never knew when all of a sudden a regular postal driver was going to turn into a psychotic killer and try to kill you. And it's almost kind of like that concept, but that existing everywhere in all society.
Yeah, sleeper cells.
And the problem is we don't talk about the true evil that happens. Instead, we have endless headlines like IDF kills 2 Palestinians in a church. IDF retaliates and kills 17 people along this border. And these headlines, they're all almost designed in a way to say one thing. Jews bad.
Yeah.
Jews bad. Jews bad. And then it's funny because most of these countries that then spread these lies, ironically, obviously the majority of all the Muslim countries do that, is kind of, I think the anti-Semitism is pretty much built into their religion. But all these Western countries that have direct ties with Israel who prevents one terror attack after another on these countries, and yet the countries still say Jew bad.
Yeah. Pretty bad.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
lived in America. And so getting back to Hamas, so also the school I was at has 350 girls. It's in a town that's 98% Muslim. Though it has roots, I mean, it's the roots of where Bethany, where on our school grounds is a stone from the 6th century. This is where Christ met Martha at the resurrection. So we're talking about, and it's the road leading. There's still part of the road that existed when Christ walked during that time and would have seen Lazarus and Martha and Mary. Lazarus's tomb is down the road, right? And so permeated even with Palestinian Muslim culture is the sense that Christians lived here and they recognize Jesus as a prophet. So they respect him and so I'm not saying that everything is perfect. You can't have divisions between, just like even with Christians. Some Christians might think we should have allow politics to be in the church or legislate Christian morality, and others would think totally different. So you can have sort of differences of opinion, if you will, and we can all live with each other between that. So with Muslim and Christian, they can have their differences, but overall, the Palestinian culture is infused with both. There.
So you were a nun in a majority Muslim town, a Christian nun.
Yep.
In your habit, I assume.
And which also was to an advantage because pious Muslims are not jihadists, the ones that I know. I'm not saying other parts of the world that may be the case, but in Palestine, it's simply not the case, or Syria or Lebanon or Iraq.
These are some of the most radicalized countries in the world she's referring to right now.
And
some of the most dangerous people that exist anywhere on the planet right now. The amount of delusion in this is unbelievable. The reason why she was quote-unquote safe is because she's pro-terrorist. That's the key. If you're pro-terrorist, they might not kill you. That's a might.
The Muslims, that for the most part, are they've all grown up together, the Christians and the Muslims, and there's a certain amount of commonality and respect. And so me being dressed like this was just like many of the women there, right? So they kind of respected that. There's the same sort of conservative culture. There's the same sort of idea that we're both have some same basic values of compassion for our neighbor, of taking care of our families, and trying to live. They have their form of fasting and almsgiving, and it's actually very important to them. And I think the best parts of Islam come from its development from Christian ideas that Muhammad came to know. I'm sure of that. You can sense it.
This is a very different story from the one that we're told in the American media, that Christians are imperiled by Muslims in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
They are not imperiled by Muslims in Palestine. That is an absolute fact. And that's just simply not the case. And again, going back to my school, in our school, we had icons, which are part of the Orthodox tradition, pictures of saints, and crosses in every classroom. No problem with that. I could show you a photograph, I can't now, but of the graduates of the latest high school graduation. And, they're embracing the nuns there. They're dressed actually in a more secular way. And it all
So a lot of your students were Muslim?
98%. The only Christian
of your students were Muslims?
Yeah. And about half the teachers during the time I was there have some Muslim, some Christian.
In a Christian school.
Yes, and actually that's all throughout Palestine. The Orthodox is relatively small. We do have schools in many of the Palestinian towns, but also Catholic schools, Lutheran schools, and most of the population, most of the students are Muslims.
Huh?
And the beautiful thing about where the
should we look it up real quick? It just sounds insane. So Muslims are going to a Christian school? Come on now.
Right, but I think it could be because the women can't go to Islamic schools.
Oh, I mean, that's a good point right there. Yeah.
So maybe
bastion
that's the
of
only
freedom
way
and light that is Islam, right?
Yeah, maybe that's the only way they can get an education, so they go to her schools.
That's a very good thought.
I don't know if that's true or
I would
not.
not be surprised if that was it right there. Because the only thing I know for certain right now is that she's lying to us. I don't know exactly how, and maybe it's something like that. It actually makes a lot of sense, Aaron. Yeah.
Not sure, but
it's so interesting.
Danger is if the Christians continue to diminish, a key part of Palestinian society and within Israel as well. You go to Nazareth, you'll see many Catholic-run hospitals, schools. And so it's a fabric, it's a part of the whole character
But I'm just still confused by the idea that the Christian population is declining under Israeli rule.
Yeah.
You would think just the opposite.
Because they repeatedly mentioned the declining population of Christians in Israel, I did a little research with Grok because it didn't sound right to me. So I had Grok rank the safest countries in the Middle East for Christians, okay? And so it's going to give us a list of all the countries in the Middle East and where Christians thrive the most and the reasons why. And just now, I modified that search, and I had it recreate this table here, adding in the West Bank and Gaza as their own countries, if we just pretended they were their own places, so we can get an understanding of how they all relate to each other. Okay, so the safest country in the Middle East for Christians, oh, what a shocker, it's Israel. Number one, it tops as an outlier, right? It means it's abnormal, with equality under the law, and ready for it? Growth in Christian numbers. Okay, occasional societal frictions for Arab Christians. Okay, violence, low. Rare faith-based incidents. Okay, legal protections. Look at this. She talked about how Christians, had all these rights that they weren't given. Basically, they were treated with the effects of the occupation, as she put it. Look at this. Legal protections, full citizenship rights for 180,000 Christians. Open worship. Okay, so there's some tensions in the ultra-Orthodox areas, and I would just call them the crazy Jews. I apologize if you all disagree with me, but they're like the radical of the Jews, in my opinion. Okay, economic stability, decent income. So what's the number two? The UAE. Okay, United Arab Emirates. They're number two. No persecution, booming economy. It's safe for over 1 million Christians. Pretty good. Bahrain. Small native community of Christians enjoy respect. Okay. No major incidents. That's pretty good. These are no attacks on Jewish and Christian sites are secure. Fully respected minority. Phenomenal so far. All pretty good. Kuwait. Okay. Rare native Christians are integrated. That's interesting. It's minimal. It's safe for 450,000. Private worship is allowed. Oh, this is fascinating, right? You see this right here? Private worship is allowed. Whereas over here,
Public.
Open, exactly. Open worship is allowed in Israel. So now we're at number 4, and now you can no longer worship your gods open. You're still fairly safe in Kuwait, but you have to worship your Christian God in hiding. Okay. Now we get into Lebanon. Lebanon is the site of that book I've read recently. I'm in the process of reading it again, called Because They Hate, which is such a powerful book. Unranked persecution. Sectarian flare-ups. Rare for Christians. Presidency reserved for Christians. Oh, that's interesting. High integration, but poverty fuels envy in mixed areas.
Yeah, look at the income.
Yeah, income less than 3,000. We start off with Israel right up here, 53,000. You got the UAE has 81,000, making big bucks over there. Bahrain making really good money as well, 67. Kuwait, good cash as well, 50. And then we hit Lebanon. Lebanon, which is definitely got some troubles in general. I'm not sure that this thing really represents how dangerous Lebanon actually is for Christians. But they're barely making any money. Yikes. Hyperinflation. Jordan. This is where the majority of all Palestinians are, if I remember correctly. Church building is okay. Native Christians are accepted. They make $4,500. They don't make much at all. Stable monarchy outlaws hate speech. Okay. Christians practice freely. That's interesting. And we go down here. Oman, moderate pressure on converts. Tolerant for expats. Occasional harassment, no killings. Okay, not bad. 28,000, not making much. Wow, look at that. Qatar, 121,000 in Qatar. That's fascinating.
It's a very expensive area, though.
Oh yeah.
All
Let's
the
keep
oil
going
money.
down. Where? Let's find. Oh, here's the West Bank, number 11. This is out of 17, so it's a little over half in the West Bank. Ancient communities in Bethlehem endure amid occupation. So this is where we start to get into the weird place, where data starts to really damage the capabilities of AI. When you have every main news organization talking about occupation, it finds its way into stuff like this. Settler violence rises, right? We literally just talked about that a few minutes ago. How even if the settlers defend themselves against violent attacks or murder attempts, it gets logged as settler violence. And then those settler violence figures get regurgitated by different organizations out there, who then it gets regurgitated. It makes it all the way up to the UN, and eventually it's settler violence is a problem.
Yeah.
And so this stuff is some of this. I think we've talked about this a bit before, but the danger of AI is that if everyone's lying about everything all the time,
Well, that's the
eventually
only source it
some
has.
lies will just make their way into mainstream AI as facts.
Yeah.
You know, like I remember. Yeah, I won't go into that. But West Bank is number 11. Increasing settler attacks. Come on now. That's tough for me. We're not gonna. So, what you don't hear about the news right now, I ingest a lot of Israeli news. Terror attacks are off the charts right now in the West Bank. Off the charts. There is weekly attempted terror attacks every single week in the West Bank against Jews. Notice how there's not a single word about that in here. They mention settler violence, but the settlers, ironically, are being subjugated to violence every single week. Really bad shit. The IDF just took down a 50-plus member terrorist organization in the process of planning a massive major attack on the scale of October 7th. That just happened a couple weeks ago. Did you hear about that?
No.
No, because the news doesn't want to tell us about that stuff. You know what they tell us about? They tell us about settler violence.
But so look at where
Yeah.
it says increasing settler attacks. That is an attack against them.
Oh, is that what I'm reading it wrong?
Yeah, now on the first one.
Okay, well that makes more sense.
Yeah, in
then.
the first one it does say increasing settler violence rises. So that's the negative against them. Mm-hmm. But on the other one it says increasing settler attacks when they burned a church.
And this makes sense, right? Because, again, we've just talked about already multiple times now how settler violence is created, the phrase of such a thing. And it doesn't mean they're not responsible for some violence here and there, guaranteed. But much of it is just not real. It's dishonest. In increasing settler attacks, that's as true as they come right there. Even that, it doesn't describe it properly because most of the news organizations, especially left-leaning ones, they're not telling you about any of these things. You won't read about that 50-person group that just stopped an October 7th style massive attack. You won't even hear about it. You know where you hear about it? You hear it on Jewish news stations, not the American ones. Instead, the American ones write things like Jews kill, Israeli Defense Forces killed 2 more Palestinians as settler violence rises. That's the kind of stuff that we're told, right? What's the effect of that? My mom, people I care about, they hear all that stuff and they think Netanyahu bad, right? Israel bad, right? Because how can you expect them to think anything else when they're being lied to by everybody?
Yeah.
Even though the information's out there, which is just such a crazy thing. Oh, look at that. Right after West Bank is Gaza. Tiny community. Shelters and bombed churches. Okay. War overshadows all. Constant threats from snipers. And bombings. Churches hit, hundreds displaced. Famine risks. So open worship. So worship is restrictive under Hamas. Shocker. Conversion is risky. Worship is limited. I'm pretty sure conversion is death. I think you'll be killed for converting. Historical tolerance strained by extremism and survival needs. So that's a fascinating concept, survival needs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to break that phrase apart for you real quick. Okay? So the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank has what's called, this is just our it's not the real name of it, it's just a nickname of it. It's called the Pay for Slay program. So the Palestinian Authority, which receives money from almost every country in the world, they then use that money and they pay the families of terrorists who kill Jews. Okay? Whether you're in the West Bank, whether you're not in Gaza or anywhere else. Okay? So just imagine you grow up in a place where there's not a lot of opportunities, perhaps, and you get told, the only thing that you know is that the survival in you and your family, if you want to make sure you and your family are taken care of forever, if you just kill one Jew, it doesn't even matter. You could grape and kill a little 7-year-old girl,
Mm-hmm.
and your family will be taken care of for the rest of their lives. This happens right now. This exists right now.
Yeah.
So we talk about how Gaza is really the bad one, and the world talks about how the PA, the Palestinian Authority, should take over, the Palestinian Authority who pays people to kill Jews. This is the world we live in when nobody tells the truth.
Yeah.
And that's why over time I think our show will be very successful. We're going to get some stuff wrong from time to time, especially me. But the amount of stuff that we're going to get correct that most people aren't even willing to acknowledge is happening is going to be pretty important.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, so survival needs, yeah. So basically, long story short, Gaza and the West Bank are not safe places for Jews to live or for Christians to live. The safest place to live in the entire Western Middle East, it's Israel, by a long shot. And obviously, they only get worse from here. So we just so for our viewers, I want you all just to keep that in mind as we move forward, so you can get some better understanding. Every time the two of them talk about, how unsafe it is for Christians, they're just lying through their teeth, the two of them. All right, let's get back to the video.
What gives them what I observed from my time in Israel and going back every year is that they do not want any Palestinians there. So the majority of Christians in Israel and Palestine are Palestinian. So they have...
Sorry, there are several million Arabs who live right now in Israel. And these people, these Arabs, same as her, same as these other people, the difference is they didn't try to grape and murder their neighbors 75 years ago. Because of that, these communities were allowed to stay when the majority of the Palestinians tried to kill all their Jewish neighbors. These communities were allowed to stay during the Nakba, as it's called, right? The great exodus of Muslims from the area, most of which who left on their own accord, because they were told to by these various Muslim countries who were all going to kill all the Jews. They were told to leave your homes while we go kill all your neighbors and your friends and your all these people you spent all this time with. We're going to kill them all. You can come back to your home. So these Muslim communities who refuse to leave and refuse to be a part of this, they're full Israeli citizens today. These people are just like the Jews, for the most part, right? And there are some radicals there, and it is a growing concern that, again, the media is not really talking about. But these are people who have full rights in Israel. Mm-hmm. They serve in the military. They serve in the parliament, right? You couldn't do that in a apartheid country, for example. Yeah. When they say apartheid, they're referring to the Palestinians, and the people in West Bank and Gaza. Yeah. But they're not citizens of Israel.
Right.
That's the whole piece. That's what, the actual citizens have full rights. When she's saying we don't want any of these Palestinians there, she's lying. There are millions of Palestinians who live in peace right now in Israel.
To leave too. What grieves me is that the Holocaust is a horrible, horrible thing that happened. People...
I'm sorry, one quick second. Right there. What is going on with her arm? She has cuts all over her hands.
The Palestinian society and within Israel as well.
Yes.
You go to Nazareth, you'll see many Catholic-run hospitals, schools.
Look at this. Why does she have all those cuts all over? That's strange. I don't know. You think she's a cutter?
And so it's a fabric, it's a part of the whole character.
But I'm just still confused by the idea that the Christian population is declining under Israeli rule.
Yeah.
You would think just the opposite.
What gives them what I observed from my time in Israel and going back every year is that they do not want any Palestinians there. So the majority of Christians in Israel and Palestine are Palestinian. So they have to leave too. What grieves me is that the Holocaust is a horrible, horrible thing that happened. People slaughtered fairly quickly. Sometimes the thought comes to me when I've driven between, there's a tunnel road that goes from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, and it's only for the settlers to go on down to the continued settlements that lead down further south in Israel to Hebron, or actually I shouldn't say Israel, into Palestine, other Palestinian territory. As you're going, that tunnel road has been carved out of land that belongs to people in Bethlehem and Bejala, which you're passing by on that tunnel road. So it's like a living death. How would you like to be a man? That was your grandfather's olive trees, but now it's controlled by Israel, and you're not even allowed to drive on that road.
Oh, and why did that happen? Because your grandfather decided, instead of living in peace with the people who he has lived in peace with, he decided to kill them all. He wanted to grape and kill his neighbors. And so he lost that land, and he lost that tree. And then his descendants, with support with sick human beings like this, tried to grape and kill as many more people as they could. And now that whole road is shut off. And it's just for settlers, so they're not graped and killed on their way to work and back home and visiting friends. All the stuff this woman leaves out is so insane to me. But the fact that Tucker allows it all to happen, to occur, everything that I'm battling against in this, as I'm very outspoken in this episode, obviously, Tucker should be fighting every one of these things.
But that's not his agenda.
That's not his agenda, because his agenda is all the Jews are evil, and I will allow my own Christians to be slaughtered and Islam to rule the world as long as I can keep. Hey everyone, this is Micah.
And this is Aaron.
From Love People Enough. Please consider signing up for our Patreon so we can continue to bring you hard-hitting episodes and grow our channel to reach the widest audience possible. Link below in the description.